Aloha. Welcome to the Mr.G podcast. Today is episode 18, Friday, June 2nd, 2023. I want to say welcome to all of our new listeners. If you're watching me today on Twitter or YouTube, you can see that I have a new look going. I shaved my head and I got some contact lenses. I like to do that. I change my look every now and then and has nothing to do with anybody else. I've been doing it my whole life. I have a chameleon. I can change into different looks and outfits, and my personality is the same as well. But with that being said, I also want to point out that this is not a basketball podcast. I do talk a lot about basketball. This time of year, April, May, and June, I watch basketball. It's the only sport that I watch, and I love basketball. It's something I grew up watching. So I do talk a lot about it. But even if you don't like basketball, or if you don't like sports in general, I have a way of making it so it's universally uh, something that you can enjoy, something interesting. I've dated many women and that did not like basketball and ended up having some sort of appreciation for it after meeting me. And I have many friends like that. I would be talking to you about basketball if we were friends talking and having a conversation, or if it was on this podcast. There's no script with this podcast. I don't really plan out what I'm going to say. Recently I got this yellow clipboard, and so I'm like, oh, I might as well have this clipboard I can finally use, so I can jot down different things. So I did do that today, and I did do that yesterday. Once again, the Mr.G podcast audio version is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts is the best place to get the Mr.G podcast, but you can also find it on Amazon Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So that's the best thing, is being able to distribute these episodes right away every day to different platforms. I've had a history of being attacked by online trolls, and having different platforms makes them work extra hard. There's a YouTube channel called Active Self Protection. One thing that he says, if you're ever the victim of a crime, you want to make your attackers pay full price. You want to make them work extra hard. And it's the same thing if you're a victim of an online crime, if you're a victim of hackers or people trying to, bully you or whatever online, you want to make them pay full price. So that's what's going on with there. Now, with that being said, game one yesterday, the Denver Nuggets won easily against the Miami Heat of the 2023 NBA Finals. And of course, I'm going for the Miami Heat. Most sports fans are. It's a huge underdog story. Jimmy Butler's a very likable character. And like I said, myself, I have been homeless before, and seeing somebody that used to be homeless being an NBA superstar is and not caring what people think, and just his whole demeanor, and having so much confidence in himself, and he shines a lot more than any other player I've seen. So Jimmy Butler is somebody that, like I said, if you don't even like sports, if you don't like basketball, you would like Jimmy Butler. He transcends basketball, and he makes the NBA playoffs more than basketball interesting for more people, including the NBA Finals too. So Denver won handily. They were 9.5-point favorites. They won by 11, but they were up from start to finish. And of course, I'm going for the Heat. I've heard people laughing outside my apartment yesterday's. I guess the neighbors think I'm a big Heat fan because I made a few Jimmy Butler videos. But I said at the start of the series, the Denver Nuggets were most likely going to win in 4 or 5 games. Of course, I'm going for the Heat, and it would be awesome if the Heat won. But it's a long shot because if you look at the two starting lineups, the Denver Nuggets have basically four all-stars, if not borderline all-stars, and then an MVP. And they also have a good bench and a really good coach. They're an experienced team that have been together for a long time. I remember seeing the Denver Nuggets, Nokic and Murray, uh, you know, um, playing together in 2017 playoffs, and I was like, wow, they're going to be pretty good. The Joker, Jokic, and Murray, and they're just a great pick and roll combo. It's really hard to stop that, especially since the big man Joker can pass out of the pick and roll better than just about anybody in NBA history. So also, however, I'm also cheering for Miami for another reason. I was previously thinking it'd be nice to see the Denver Nuggets and the Joker, win MVP and finally get center stage that he rightfully deserves. But also for personal reasons, I have family that live in the Denver metro area, and I don't like them personally. They don't like me personally, and they've been in Denver for area for quite a while. So that whole city's probably like really like, oh, we might win the championship for finally the first time first time ever. And actually, I don't want to, I don't want them to be happy. Okay. You hear that? They're probably listening to my podcast too. That's like how they are. They're totally fucked in the head. I came from an extremely abusive household, abused by my father and my sisters, and they've always maintained a close relationship with our fucking horrible, disgusting father. And it's crazy how even adults, they're almost 50 years old, they somehow justify things in their head, like, oh, the abuse wasn't that bad, or if it wasn't that bad, then you deserved it, or if you didn't deserve it, then you're exaggerating, or like it's just like insane. And I have a very analytical, objective mind, so it's just like, no, we had this. Me and my twin brother had to sleep in a closet in the garage. As far as abuse from our sisters, there was multiple times this. I've been in dozens of fights in my life, but some of the worst punches I ever had happened at our old two older sisters. There's two sets of twins, me and my twin brother, and our two older sisters, 4 years older than us. If you want to know more about it, you can read my first book, Guns of Education. But uh, the some of the toughest, hardest punches I ever took were from my older sister when I knew I couldn't fight back, and I knew I couldn't like hit her back because she was a girl. But like she would just sucker punch me at close range, and those are some of the worst black eyes that I've had. Also, one year we were at the Grand Canyon for some reason. Thinking back, it must have been really dangerous for me and my brother to travel with them to the Grand Canyon. Once they left us at a mall in New Orleans. We grew up in South Texas, and they just drove us to New Orleans and left us at a mall. And then they went and got drunk on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. And me and my brother, we were like 10, 11 years old, alone at this mall for like almost 24 hours. And they were like, I guess, trying to hope somebody were going to kidnap us, really. Our father encouraged us to get into cars with strangers. That sounds so like bad, and you don't realize how bad it is as a kid. But as far as my sister, we were at the Grand Canyon one year. She took a snowball and just packed it up as tight as it could go. And then when I wasn't looking at close range, just threw it at my face as hard as she could. And I had a huge welt and huge shiner of no medical attention or nothing. Uh, and just that, and like all the abuse and shit, and even as adults what they did with our mother's will and our grandmother's will, and how they just scavenged all the possessions like rats. Hawaii has the biggest rats you'd ever seen. There's a huge bug problem going on in Hawaii right now. They had to shut down the airport because of bed bugs. It's bad, man. But they're building a new stadium. They built that huge rail, and Hawaii, Honolulu is known as like the one of the lowest ranked airports in the United States. And it is like rinky dinky, so like tiny. Like why not build a new airport and instead of a new football stadium? But Hawaii loves its football. So, but like I said, yeah, there's a huge bug problem, and I was thinking about that. Like, the argument right now of I've been watching on a lot of different podcasts is, are aliens. They exist. They are here. And you look at the smartest people around the world, and 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe, none of them would, concur that aliens are here and surveying the humans and going in and out of the ocean. None of them would really agree to that. Uh, but the narrative has changed over the last 15 years. And now government officials have come out in the last week or two and have gone on record saying that the United States has um, been visited, or there are other entities that could have been on this planet for millions of years with advanced technology, and some of that advanced technology has been acquired by the United States government and has been tested on. and there has been re-engineering techniques going on for 2 generations now. Because if you look at Roswell, that happened in the 1950s. Those Everyone is dead from Roswell, and so the next generation of engineers that are working on this project, it's not going to take long to keep a secret when it's going like through generational, uh, you know, configurations. Like, more and more people are finding out about it, and like I said, the government has gone on record saying that that we have been visited and there has been re-engineering going on. So I was thinking about that, and as far as roaches go, humans are the most conceited, narcissistic creatures that this planet has ever seen, and they've taken over the planet and ruined the oceans and the skies, and just polluted everything. Uh, we've always had this like perspective that aliens want to be our friends and they want to share our technology, or they want to like be our overlords at worst, be our slaves, or like, what if like we're just like roaches to aliens, because like in Hawaii, like there's so many roaches. You see a roach and you just kill it right away and you don't think twice about it. And my girlfriend's like, nasty little creatures, she says in her English accent, nasty little creatures. And then like, I'll get a weapon, even a knife, and just a roach. And roaches in Hawaii are like the rats in Hawaii. They're fucking huge, just like the carrots in Hawaii. They're fucking huge. Rats, carrots, and roaches. We got the biggest ones you'd ever seen, right? But I'll go all out, and I would never do that to a human or an animal or a mammal. But roaches were brought here to Hawaii just like rats and just like every other mammal. The only mammal native to Hawaii is a bat. Like, that's very rare, the Hawaiian bat. Every other mammal hitched a ride on a ship or a plane or swam here in the ocean. There are marine mammals that are native to Hawaii, the monk seal and all the different whales in Hawaii. But as far as land mammals, there weren't any. So all of the land mammals, the rats, the mongoose, the cats, the dogs, the pigs, the cows, everything was brought here, um, including the insects, the roaches, the mosquitoes. Most plants are not native to Hawaii. They were brought here by humans as well. And that doesn't have anything to do with aliens, except aliens are all over the skies in Hawaii. The craziest thing, I slept outside in Hawaii for 3 years straight, and I looked at the sky every night, and I saw many different things in the sky. I could do a whole episode about the different things I've seen in the sky in Hawaii, but one thing I'll tell you about is I saw this like on a clear, calm night at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I saw like a bird man in the sky, and he was like having trouble with his wings, and he was like all flying like all awkward. So it wasn't like a jet propulsion or an electrical thing. It was just like a bird man just in the skies, and just it was just like a bird man. I guess it could have been like a bird that's huge that looks like a man, but it looked like a bird man. Like, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And me and my cats were both looking at it, and both of us like had to get good looks. We're like, because it wasn't flying at high altitude, it was very low, and we were just like staring at it, and we were over in this wooded area where there wasn't anybody around, and I think it was like a holiday or something. There's not hardly any noise, and I could have shouted at it, but I was just like, "Don't move, let's just stare at this thing." Uh, the most interesting thing that I saw right up in front of me and Moses, my cat's eyes, was ball lightning, and or you could call it ball lightning or you can call it an orb. But when they describe how the UFO tic tacs move and how they move in like an uncertain pattern, like it has a brain of its own, but it's all over the place. Like, that's how this ball lightning was, and it was in 2014, in near the Mililani, near a famous pass called Kipapa Pass, where their ancient legend is that there was a huge battle between like Maui and and the Oahu army. It's like in the must have been like in like the like 900 or 800 year. And like there was so much battle. There was a Kipapa Valley, and there was so much blood that the valley turned red, and it was just a river of blood going through it because the battle was so fierce. And the two armies fought at the top of Kipapa Pass, and they would fall like hundreds of feet, that 200, 300 feet, even further down into the gulch, Kipapa Gulch, and the it was covered in red. One time I camped on the side of Kapapa Gulch during a hurricane, and it got so loud it felt like the gulch was full of like rushing water. And I had my tent and my cat tied onto a pallet. And at one point during the hurricane, the pallet wood on the wooden pallet just started breaking, just started snapping like, and we were just holding on to the things, and the wood was just breaking. And we woke up the next day, and the sun came out, and it was clear, and me and my cat got out of the tent, and there was just broken branches and trees falling everywhere. And you would have been like, wow, how did you survive this? Because all the trees were falling all around my tent and not on top of the tent where me and my cat were. So like it was just like going into like a tornado aftermath, but it was I guess it was a hurricane aftermath. All right, that was a good memory. But I camped out in the Hawaii woods for 3 years with my cat, if you're wondering. There's more about that in my third book. This is my first book available on Amazon, Gonzo Education. And if you're watching me on Twitter right now, I've been doing this podcast. This is episode 18. I've been doing it 18 days every day. On Twitter, I've maybe had like 1,000 views. I'm just not saying it's a lot. I'm speaking analytically. Maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand views. But I don't think I've received a single like on my podcast on Twitter. And that is like really like it isn't hurtful, but it is just like an awkward position. Like, oh, his podcast must not be that good because people aren't liking it. Yeah, they don't like the sound of his voice. Yeah, that's it. Or his camera's not good enough, or he's not talking about things that people want to hear. Yeah. That's what like the haters and the trolls would want you to believe. It's funny, like I'll upload a short of this podcast on YouTube. It would just be like 30 seconds, but it will have 400 views, or it'll have 404 views, 4 likes. Out of it'll have 404 views and 4 likes. And then the next video will have 406 views and 6 likes. Then the next video, 403 views and 3 likes. What does that tell you? It seems like somebody's adding 400 views to each video to make the algorithm think, oh, people don't like this. People don't want to see this. You shouldn't play this for people. Oh, yeah, but I'm still here and I'm still doing it every day. And those guys, I feel sorry for them and how they have to get up out of bed in the morning, because it's not like I'm saying controversial things that they don't want people to hear. It's just they're such a small person that they don't want to see somebody else succeed. They don't want somebody to use their talents to gain something, to move up in the world. They don't want to see somebody work hard and achieve something because they're not willing to work hard. They're not willing to work on themselves. They're not willing to try to achieve something or try to make the world a better place. They're just living in their own psychological mess. And they think if they put down somebody like me, a 6'3", extremely educated, genius, good looking motherfucker, that they'll somehow get points. Oh, I put him down. And people, you'll meet people like that in person. I've met some fucking shitty people that try to stand in front of me or try to talk down to me, and they think that they can talk down to me, then they somehow get something. I've worked some of the shittiest fucking jobs, even after the University of Texas. And it was so surprising how people would just like try to talk over you and try to act like they're like something better than just to make themselves feel better, you know? And it's like, work on yourself. The only person you should be competing with is yourself. You know, I talk to an 18-year-old the same way I talk to an 85-year-old, and it's all about respect. If you're respectful to me, then I'll be respectful to you. It's the golden rule. And if you fuck with me, then I'll not want to fuck with you, and it's took me a while to learn that you don't want to give people second and third chances. Maybe give people a second chance every now and then, but never give anybody a third chance. All right, so game 2 of the NBA Finals is coming up, and I'm cheering for the Heat. But like I said with my predictions for game 1, you want to bet with your head and not your heart. And my head was telling me Denver's the better team. Denver's going to easily cover. Denver really wants this. Denver has something to prove. But my heart's saying, "Oh, I like Jimmy Butler with a fadeaway 3-pointer. Go Jimmy, buckets, go!" You know, but in betting, that's the number one rule. And all in my 25 plus years of betting on NBA basketball is never bet with your heart, bet with your head. And that's because I've lost so much money on Spurs games in particular. I would have an even better winning percentage if I didn't bet on the Spurs. And there were a couple seasons where I was like, I'm just not betting on the Spurs because my head is not clear there. They're my favorite team. That's where I'm from. So I'm not thinking clearly. Every other game, I would have a way better winning percentage. But anytime I've lost big money, it was on the San Antonio Spurs. I think in 2006, when I took my first trip out west, solo trip, and I was waiting for the NBA basketball season to end. And I had so much money on the Spurs, and it was versus the Dallas Mavericks. I believe it was either second round or Western Conference Finals. And it came down to game 7. And it came down to maybe one shot that was rolling around the rim, and that it just rolled out, and the Mavericks went on to win the championship that year. But would that be no? Actually, the Mavericks went on to winning the Western Conference championship that year. They played the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals, where the Heat beat the Mavericks. The Mavericks would get a rematch against the Heat 5 years later in 2011. But the fact of the matter is, you never want to bet with your head, with your heart. You want to bet with your head, and that's the number one rule in betting. Another way, there are a few other tricks that I've learned, and I have them listed here. I normally always bet on college basketball, but what one trick I've learned is on college football. On some days, you'll have like 100, 200 games on some Saturdays, and sometimes you have a team way outmatched than the other team, and that team will be a huge favorite. And generally 80-90% of the time, even though it's a huge line, that team covers. And I've seen that to be real and making money on it. But here in Hawaii, Hawaii has a Division I football team, but every year they'll play a few big time schools from the mainland. Like they'll play Alabama, or they'll play Florida, or this year Vanderbilt or Stanford, or Oregon State, or any of the big schools. And since Hawaii is a small school, Hawaii is a huge underdog, like 30, 40, sometimes 50-point underdog. And one thing I'm betting on college football is, and on college basketball, if there's a huge favorite, if a college basketball team is a 35-point favorite, then you always want to bet on the favorite, because they can't make that line too high. And there will always be like fans of the underdog team that are going to bet on them, that are going to make that line go. So betting with your head and betting with your heart's the number one rule, but that is also connected to betting on the team, regardless of how you feel about either school. Bet on the team that has the highest spread, because generally they'll always cover that. And that's a trick. Another trick is in NBA basketball during the regular season, the road teams on a second game of a back-to-back do not hardly ever cover the spread. So you always bet on the home team when the road team is on the second game of a back-to-back. And Denver Nuggets are in the NBA Finals. If you want to go even further, one of the best bets in basketball over the last 30 years is betting Denver to cover their home spread against the road team that's going in on the second game of a back-to-back. Because they don't really have back-to-backs that often in the season anymore. Maybe that's one reason, because people made so much money betting on them. But what that means is the team played the night before. So if you're the Miami Heat, and or if you're the San Antonio Spurs, you played Houston the night before, and then you have to take a plane to Denver to play the Nuggets, and Denver is high altitude. You could do the same with Salt Lake City, is also higher altitude, but when you lose your breath easier at higher altitude, it's harder to breathe, and you just played the night before. And basketball, you have to be in shape. You cannot be out of breath. And so the Denver Nuggets have an extremely, like an 800% covering the spread percentage when they're playing a team on the second game of a back-to-back. But you could do that with any team in the NBA. You bet on the home team when the road team is playing a second game of a back-to-back. Another thing that I've learned over the years that also John Ornelas mentioned once or twice is in the NBA playoffs, in a best of 7 series, when the home team loses the first game, since the first 2 games are always played at the home team's arena, if they lose the first game to the road team, that then normally in the second game, they always blow out the second team, the road team, and tie up the series 1-1. They have a huge high winning percentage of covering that spread because they're going to be favored and probably even favored more than they were in the first game. So it's a best of 7 playoff series, and the home team gets the first 2 games at home. That first game, let's say they're favored by 5 points. The next game, they'll be if they lose it even in the first game, they'll be favored by 6 points. That's because they're going to come out all out, because the last thing they want to do is go 0-2. And it is rare for the road team to win the first 2 games on the road in the playoffs, in the NBA playoffs. That did happen just in the last series when the Miami Heat won the first 2 road games in Boston Garden, or in Boston at TD Garden. So that does happen. And I was thinking that about that game. Like, and that was because like Miami, the only way they were going to win that series is if they won the first 2 games on the road, because Boston was probably a better team. They won that team with heart and just believing in themselves. They won that series. Miami did, with heart and just believing in themselves against an overmatched team, which you see happen in basketball lots. Think of the NCAA basketball tournament where you have a number 1 or number 2 Kentucky or Kansas being eliminated by a Seton Hall or a Butler University, making it to the Final Four a few years ago. So that's another great thing about basketball is if you believe in yourself, everybody has a chance, and hard work beats talent a lot, and that shows in basketball. One thing that first comes to mind is the stacked Lakers team in 2004 that lost to the Pistons team with Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, coached by Larry Brown. But one of the best NBA coaches of all time, Larry Brown's first and only championship as a coach. And that team worked together and found a way to beat the all-time greats, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Gary Payton, and Karl Malone. So it can be done. Many times in life, you may be at a disadvantage, but what you learn during that time period is priceless. I said it on yesterday's podcast. Most millionaires get their money through inheritance, but most billionaires are self-made. And you wouldn't believe the statistic on that. It's like 99% of all millionaires get their money from inheritance, and 99% of all billionaires are self-fucking made. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and end today's podcast. Join us tomorrow when we'll talk a little bit more about basketball, and we'll talk about other things. Once again, this isn't a basketball podcast. This is just a podcast that I'm doing about my life, anything that I want to talk about. And today is episode 18. It's been 18 days since I started. Every day it gets better, and every day I learn something new. And I hope the same is true with you. Thank you for listening, and everybody, aloha.